Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition of Rapid Recap here at Inside Nebraska. With me as always, it's Greg Smith. I'm Zack Carpenter at Inside Nebraska. And Greg, I honestly decided we were talking about what we were going to talk about on here just before coming on camera. And I'm just like, as we're breaking it down before hopping on, it's like, I don't even know where to begin. Like, you know what, let's just start with that. Let's go unscripted. So what's the first thing that pops out from today's loss?
Gut punch. It was a gut punch. Anytime you have, and I feel like this has happened a handful of times here in recent memory where you've got these walk-off field goals in Memorial Stadium. I feel like I've been standing in that end zone now several times and seen those walk-offs. It's a gut punch every single time, no matter who the opponent is. This time especially, as we talked so much kind of coming into really this month about playing meaningful football in November, and Nebraska has not answered the bell either time in those games, kind of with today kind of being the culmination of that as well. Obviously, the big talking point of today, and I think the thing that everyone on our message board is talking about, the thing that so many people on social media are talking about, is the 5 turnovers, and it is five
all by the quarterback.
All by the quarterback from 3 different quarterbacks, and something that I don't know. Have you ever seen that?
I mean, I don't think so. Unless the Chiefs, when they went 2-14 the one year, they did that when they had their run of quarterbacks. I don't know. I don't think I've ever seen that though.
I've never seen it here in Nebraska. Like, and maybe it's something I've just burned out of my memory. But which is very possible. Hopefully, in a couple of years, we won't be thinking about this game anymore. But we are going to talk about it today. It was rough. Like, there is no way, no other real way to describe it. And something that I was thinking about kind of before too is that in a lot of ways it was the same things that we've seen from each of these quarterbacks. Right? You saw Heinrich Harburg have trouble with that crossing route to Thomas Fedoni. That continues to plague him. It continues to be there if the throw is made accurately, but he can't make it. We saw Jeff Sims inexplicably, and I think to me this is the most frustrating turnover if we were to rank them. The fumble on the design run where it turned into a broken play and then he dropped the ball like that one.
Well, it turned into a broken play because if he would have followed where the play was designed to go, at worst it would have been no yard loss, maybe like a 1 yard loss instead. Instead of he didn't follow the block, and then he went out to the right and got stood up and fumbled the ball inside I believe the 20-yard line, 25-yard line, and set up Maryland to tie the game 10-10. Like Nebraska's quarterbacks put the defense in bad situations again, and it ruined another strong standout defensive effort from the Blackshirts today because they finally did what we've been talking about. This is the final piece. Takeaways, and they had a season high 3 of them today, and 2 of them led to 10 points for Nebraska. And it's a really frustrating day when you see how it all plays out.
You get 3 takeaways at home against a team that's kind of reeling. You got to win that game. Like, if you were to, it's really hard to explain how you lose a game in which you have 3 takeaways at home against an opponent.
Points.
Yeah, and allow 13 points against what was talked about as a high-powered offense, and it is. They have good skill talent at Maryland. But the way that you lose that is what we started out talking about, which is those 5 turnovers all by the quarterbacks. Like, it's really tough. It's another thing that kind of come to mind in the offensive thing. And I know that so much of and rightfully so, criticism of this game is going to go to the offense. Some of this is in play calling as well. Like I said on our Insiders board, I have been, and I've said, it's been on this video, I've been a Satterfield apologist, right? I have been the one to stand here and say that I think that he's doing a better job than people realize. His hands are tied. Some of the sequencing was good.
I agree with all of that too.
Today was tough, man. There were some tough looks today, even though Emmett Johnson had kind of a game high for Nebraska. I think it was 17 carries for 82 or 85 yards, and he had a nice game. He still didn't get the ball enough in this game. It felt like he was getting lathered up in that second half, and then there was a sequence when Jeff Sims was in there that was like
3 straight Sims run plays.
Yeah, it was, and that's not. There were some passes in there too. It was like 7 straight Sims type plays that ended up happening, and you just can't, like, it's unexplainable. Then the big talking point, kind of in the Matt Rhule press conference, I think it started there, was about that final drive, right? And once they get down to 1st and goal, and kind of the sequence of play calling there, even though it sounds like that first down play was not supposed to be like an RPO or anything like that. And Chuba was supposed to hand that ball off. But tough look for Marcus Satterfield, because one of the things too, and this was the one thing that we did talk about before this video, is that if all of the quarterbacks are turning the ball over in this manner, and all of them have had some really bad football stretches this year, at some point that comes back on the OC. Like, I think that it now begins really fair game to have these talks with Matt Rhule, especially about what's going on at offensive coordinator, even though it just feels so early to be talking about that. But you just can't ignore those issues.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the receiver core being banged up and not doing enough. I mean, Harburg had the first interception where like you said, the pass was there, the Fedoni pass was there, and it ruins a 4th and 5 fake punt run that was called, which is a nice play, and then you turn it over right away. Well, then 2 of the next 3 or 4 passes that Harburg had, one was a back shoulder fade thrown perfectly on 3rd down to Alex Bullock. That it would have been, it was a drop, it would have been a brilliant catch, but like I still think you need to come down with that one. Then Malachi Coleman, Harburg hit him on a deep crosser. It hit him in the hands, and like that would have been a 15 to 20 yard gain. So he's not getting that. Harburg was not getting that help, and this offense isn't exactly helping Satterfield either. But Satterfield's not helping them. The play at the end. So I was down in the media room. I had to get down sooner than you guys. So I was down in the media room watching on Peacock on a laptop.
Shouts to Peacock.
It was 3rd and goal from the 5, and Purdy throws an interception that winds up leading to the game-winning field goal. His time expires, and I'm like, I shouted on accident. Thankfully, no one was down there. But I was like, "What are you doing with that play call? Like, why call that?" Because of the way, you'll probably agree with this, the way that Nebraska's won games and just sort of scratch and claw, tooth and nail, like to grind out games. You have a 3rd and goal at the 6-yard line, 10-10. Your defense is playing lights out, except for 3 explosive plays in the first half. Your defense is playing lights out. 3.5 minutes left. You grind away, maybe go up 13-10 with like 3 minutes or less left, roundabout, and then instead you don't do that, and it's just a really poorly thrown ball, or at least a miscommunication leading to that interception.
Yeah,
I don't know. It just
and Matt Rhule said too. He talked about that and said that's what should normally happen in that situation. Either it's a touchdown because you get the crosser, or it's just an incompletion because it sails out of the corner of the end zone, which is normal football play type stuff. And I think that Nebraska's coaching staff on offense has to throw that out the window, to be totally honest. Things with we talk about even going back to what we were saying about Emmett Johnson not getting enough consecutive carries, and then you run the play action, but then Malachi Coleman drops the ball, or there's miscommunication or whatever. Those are normal football things on offense that you would normally see from an offense that executes at a normal rate, right? Nebraska is not that. They have to stop doing that. And I think that's what actually has kind of dawned on me. That's what's getting them in trouble, is in a normal situation, you can throw that crossing pattern, and it's either out of bounds or it's a touchdown, and you just won the game, and now everybody's going nuts. Nebraska football, for where they are right now, they needed to just kick that field goal and let their defense play. And that's where we kind of are. But again, that's on Marcus Satterfield to make that adjustment and understand what he has in his team. We've talked so much about the good job that this staff as a whole has done in kind of adjusting to their personnel, playing to their strengths, just knowing that we got to grit and grind and kind of figure it out. And then to have that happen because you fall back into what would, again, be the normal play. This isn't a normal offense. That's what gets them in trouble. I think that's an adjustment that they're going to have to make. It sounds so weird to say, but it's an adjustment that they're going to have to fully make for at least for the remainder of this season.
All of that is exactly what I was thinking about, because we know what the offensive identity needs to be to win games this season. We know what the plan is as far as how the game flow is going to go, and I mean, you have to win games uglier than sin, and Nebraska looked like it was on its way to doing that until that last play. And now, after winning 3 games in a row, they lose 2 games in a row, and all 5 of them were the exact same game. The exact same game.
They're all the same game, but more mistakes from Nebraska, and this one obviously more explosive plays given up in last week's game, and those are kind of the 2 things. But otherwise, you're right. It is just they're basically the same games over and over again. Spoiler alert, I think we're going to see the exact same thing in Madison next week.
They're down 24-3 to Northwestern right now.
That's wild. So we'll see kind of where that goes. But it's going to be, but psychologically, as I'm thinking about next week in Madison, and it's going to be tough to go up there. Nebraska has a several game losing streak against Wisconsin, right?
Was it 9?
Or several year. Yeah, I think it's 9. And so
another walk-off win last year, Wisconsin coming in here.
You got to shake this one off and then go kind of, again, exercise those demons up there in Madison, that's going to be hard. Like, that's a tall task. If they can do that, that's
I keep cutting
something.
you off. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
No, you're all
I get
good.
antsy.
But that's going to be an interesting one and that's one where we'll be paying a close attention to how the team kind of talks this week and how kind of the vibe and the tone is around the team, because they've got to flush this one and move past it. But like we started off saying, it's a gut punch for sure.
Yeah, and making matters more difficult is you get a Saturday night primetime game in Madison in Camp Randall Stadium.
Great.
So it's not like, I mean, yeah, that's an awesome recruiting deal and awesome spotlight game, but it's not going to help your chances of winning and pulling out a win over Wisconsin that is not that great either.
No.
But all of these teams in the Big Ten West are like the exact same type of bad and exact same type of average, and they play the exact same game. It doesn't matter. It's like any given Sunday. It literally reminds you of like the AFC East or the NFC South that year.
All of them.
The year that New Orleans hosted a
turns,
playoff game going 7-9, where it's like it's just war of attrition where like anybody can win.
That's why the turnover thing is such an important deal, right? If you just don't turn the ball over, which again, I know we talked about this. I think that at this point we probably have to just stop saying that, if they just didn't turn the ball over, they'd be fine because they're going to turn it over. How about we keep it to 3 or less, and you also turn them over a couple of times, and you start to get better at converting in the red zone, which is something I think you can control, or even in the green zone once you get past that 30. But it's going to be another war next week. It's going to be ugly. Like it's going to be a huge opportunity for Nebraska because to get bowl eligible this year, they're going to have to do one of two things that both would make people really happy, not just setting aside the bowl part of it. Either in that skid against Wisconsin, or you beat the hated Iowa Hawkeyes at home on Black Friday. Either one of those people would take. They probably prefer both, but it's going to be tough sledding, and these games are going to look the exact same way that they have been for the last few weeks.
I can already predict right now, as you're saying this, I'm already getting pissed off about the discourse this week, and you're going to see. So, would you rather beat Wisconsin and lose to Iowa, or lose to Wisconsin and beat Iowa?
I'd just rather take
I say the
a
same
win.
thing.
I don't know. Just take a win.
Yeah, it's like
that's what I was going to say.
It's like, how about you just take one?
Just take one.
Take one. Try to get one.
In theory, the next one. I would just like the
just the next one. Like whatever the next one is, try to get it off try to get it off the plate. But at the bowl predictions video going into Michigan State, we started talking about a potential Big Ten West title. I started talking about how we might have to start planning for a trip to Indy in case, and a bowl trip for like budgeting out and just planning everything. It's like, well, maybe not. Maybe a bowl game still. We're still planning that out. But the Indy trip, we can flush the headlines we were planning to use if they would have beat Michigan State and then today Maryland. But I mean, yeah, that's 3 frustrating games. I mean, we talk about the 1-score losses, and Nebraska was 2-14 coming into this season, 1-score losses since 2021, and 13-10 at Minnesota to open the season, featuring a Jeff Sims interception in the end zone at the end of the half. Jeff Sims an interception at the end of the game that led to the game-winning field goal as time expired. So all two familiar games, and then last week Michigan State, a 3-point loss. So just out of those 3, which one do you think frustrates Husker fans more? The most recent one?
Probably the most recent one, just because it's the most recent.
At home,
and it was at home. But man, when we look back on the season, that Minnesota game is a really tough one. They played so well that night. I thought outside of that, especially on defense, that's a tough one. It's going to either, if you look back at it, either Minnesota or today. Mm-hmm. Today is going to, I think, for the fan base, is going to be really hard to swallow because of the 5 turnovers.
I almost think the Michigan State one's easier to swallow because the officiating had such a big deal.
Yeah.
Had such
and
a big hand in it. So at least you could be mad at something other than your own team that had a legitimate impact on things. But you're right, that Minnesota getting off to that start, they win that game 10-3. Yep. I feel like we're talking about an entirely different season. We might be talking about an entirely different quarterback situation.
Right.
If we're being completely honest. But any last thoughts to add? We purposely went unscripted here and we bounced around. You were saying some really good stuff, and I'm just like, like good stuff, man. Because I just there's so many things to unpack from this game, and there's so many frustrating things where it's like, where do you start? And
yeah, my final thing, I guess, is just I'm real curious on how the team responds and reacts this week. I really want to be able to dig into kind of how they respond at their practices early in the week, what that Bloody Tuesday practice ends up looking like. Marcus Satterfield and what he's like when we speak with him later in the week. I think it's going to be a really interesting week to see what kind of resilience this team has and how they bounce back for what's going to be a tough game, no matter what ends up happening against Northwestern today. Wisconsin very well could lose that game. They're on their way to getting blown out as we record this. By the time you guys watch it, it could have turned completely. But I'm really interested to see how the team bounces back.
Yeah, and we'll have full coverage of that at InsideNebraska.com. Encourage you guys to go check that out. Hop on the message board, Insiders board, to sound off on some things about the frustrations with today's game, Wisconsin next week, how big that one is for Nebraska to try to get bowl eligible. And encourage you guys to like this video, subscribe to the Inside Nebraska YouTube channel so you can get these videos and the press conference footage post-game. And this coming week during really interesting week for Nebraska football, get those dropped directly into your feed if you would like. So, for Greg Smith, I'm Zack Carpenter. We'll catch you guys again next time.